get a sense of where when I walk into a hospital room or up to a person in the hospital and I offer to play for them, I'm trying to get a sense of their energy level, maybe their pain level, maybe their mood, just the feeling in the room. And that first notes that I play, the first piece that I play, should validate where they are, should serve as best as I can discern their needs in the moment. And that, if I do that well, we become connected across this musical bridge.
When I first chatted with today's guest several years ago, it was totally a shock to me, the work he did, totally moved me to tears as I read about it, and I've been meaning to have him on the podcast ever since, and it finally happened at the 2019 International Society of Bassists Convention. I'm Jason Heath, this is Contrabass Conversations, and Lloyd Goldstein is back on the podcast. I love Lloyd. I consider him one of my true friends. We've hung out, we call each other on the phone, we've hung out with our wives in Italy, drinking wine and telling stories, and just such a genuine, authentic person. I could have him on the podcast every week and it would never get old. I know you're going to enjoy all the avenues we explore. It was such a fun conversation. And it was amazingly difficult to find time at this event or other bass events because Lloyd and I are running around doing different things, but we made it work, and I'm so glad we did. I want to give a quick shout out here at the beginning to our sponsors, Upton Bass, Steve Swan String Bass, Modacity, D'Addario Strings, A440 Violin Shop, and Goldstein Music. Thank you so much, and here we go with today's episode. Lloyd Goldstein.
Hey.
The bitter end of ISB 2019, Saturday morning. Everybody's clearing out of the exhibits here, and I consider you one of my close friends at this point, and we chatted for the podcast, not in person, back in, I think, 2016, if I remember right, and it was just so inspiring to learn about what you do. And then I've seen you, I don't even know how many times since then, and so it's just great to get to know you beyond that, and you're just one of my favorite people. So thank you for taking some time to chat.
It's my pleasure, and the feeling is mutual. I'm fascinated with your trajectory and your rebel. Your rebel.
We were talking about that last night.
Yeah. The fact that you make lots of left turns and they always turn out right.
That's a good. Well, and you've made a lot of left turns too, and I'll make sure to link up so people can check out Lloyd's episode that we did a few years ago with his whole path, and he's got a beautiful website. And if you want to shed a tear about the beautiful work that he does, playing for cancer patients at the Moffitt Cancer Center in Tampa, Florida, definitely check out his website, lloydgoldstein.com. But maybe we can start by talking about what you've been doing here at ISB. What was your session at the conference?
I was involved in two sessions. My first session was a concert, actually, this time. The first time I played a recital, whatever you want to. It's funny because what I do with Josh, I think of it more as a set. Or whatever. The word recital doesn't seem to fit it. But I brought my current musical partner, Joshua Paul, who plays banjo with me. But he's a really super talented young man, multi-instrumentalist, singer. But with me, he mostly plays banjo. And we did a set of the music we've been working on for the past year or so. A very eclectic mix of original tunes, arrangements, from classical to folk music to some of my tunes are these. We did a blues tune, a funk tune, some things that aren't really definable. And he is just the most delightful musician. I'm just having a ball working with him. The other session I did was with the young bassists yesterday, and just shared with them a few things that I care about just life and music in general. I focused on, it was called Songs You Can Play for Your Grandmother / One Beautiful Note.
Nice.
So it was a tribute to the idea that we don't have to rely on the opinions of educated musicians on whether our music is valued or felt, but that it truly is a universal language, and that anyone can be moved by what we do and they know right away whether it's working or it isn't. And I think that's even more important maybe than the opinions of other qualified professionals. And a sort of a tribute and a demonstration of Francois' idea of this le son premier.
Yeah, which we talked about before. Yeah.
And then the idea that your life is an example of, and to a degree, maybe mine too.
Yours for sure. Yeah.
The idea that if we sincerely pursue something that we're passionate about, and we do it with an attitude of service, that the universe will rush up to meet us, so that even if other people are looking at us from our life trajectory from outside and saying, not predicting our success necessarily, that there's this basic principle of synchronicity that's built into the fabric of life and the universe that will come to meet us in a way that we can't even predict, and offer us opportunities to continue growing and sharing.
It's great to have the young bassists hear that message. And I've seen you, I've seen you so much since we chatted for the podcast before, but I saw you present in Prague in 2016. We were both at George Amorim's Viva El Bajo, and you presented there. And I got a chance to see you play in the hospital in South Texas and actually play some pieces. And then I don't even know where else, Luca. And then I've started to work on your pieces too. Lloyd, by the way, and I'll make sure to link up to this, and it's easier to get than ever. But Lloyd has this fabulous collection of 12 pieces. The collection is called The Way Back, and some of them are arrangements, some of them are compositions, and then you're constantly, or semi-regularly at least, putting out new compositions on Facebook. And so I can't wait for those to come out too. But if you haven't heard Lloyd's music, I'll put a little bit at the beginning and end here, but definitely check out his website and check out that book and check out his recordings. And they are just such great pieces I've used them for recitals. I think 3 times now. I know I'm gonna play them the next couple weeks, several times. So definitely, it's just such joyful, moving, heartfelt music, and it's what you play in the hospital, right? That's yes. How these pieces come about.
Yeah, it's a direct outgrowth of my work at the hospital. When I got there something like 12 years ago, I just had this nice idea to play for people, but I had no repertoire, and I didn't know what was going to work. And over time, I realized that simple tunes, songs really, and with embellished upon. That could be easily followed by people right out of the box, and only maybe 2 to 3 minutes long, would be the best sort of dose of music for people and a way to connect with them. But there wasn't, unlike if we were violinists or pianists, or there weren't just songbooks that I could open. I mean, I could use those as a guide, but it seemed just easier to just make my own arrangements, especially because our instrument, being as unique as it is, having the huge range that it has, to capitalize on all as many textures and colors as possible. It just seemed easier just to make stuff happen. And prior to that, I had only written one piece prior to that. So this desire to share with these people brought this out of me, and I'm so grateful for that, to the work for that. And I never predicted, I never would have guessed the reaction to the pieces from, quote unquote, I hate to say real bassists, but just people out there that more from the. These are stupid
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. People that you would, people with established professional careers.
Never would have suspected that they would enjoy them, but they tell me that it makes them. I get this comment a number of times that it makes their. I have a friend, the woman who actually did the typesetting for the book, Janet Clippard. She says she plays, I don't know if she still does, but plays through the pieces, was playing through them on a daily basis simply because they opened up her playing. because they felt so natural. And that was, wow, fantastic.
This episode is brought to you by D'Addario Strings. Our friends at D'Addario want to help listeners change their strings safely and efficiently, and they have a few tricks to help you achieve that. Make sure you have the right size string for your bass. String sizes are determined by playing length, the distance from nut to bridge. If your bass has non-standard after lengths before the nut or after the bridge, you may need a different size than you think. Learn more at orchestral.daddario.com, and thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast. Goldstein Music has been supplying the bass world and the music world in general at this point with great services and products for over 60 years. It was started by Samuel Goldstein and has been run by Barry Goldstein, who I've had on the podcast, and they are just such a great company for anything you need for basses. They've got a great selection of instruments. They've got a great selection of bows, accessories, and just a great bunch of people working behind the scenes. Barry has been a true friend to the bass community for so long, and it's so great to have Goldstein supporting the podcast. Learn more about everything that they do at Goldstein.com. There is this mode in my practicing app, Modacity, which I totally love. It's called Deliberate Practice, and it's such a cool feature. Here's Modacity founder and CEO Mark Gelfo on how this works.
One of my pain points as a musician was like not really having a method to generate reliable improvement. And deliberate practice is like the scientific method for music practice. So what you do is you identify the one thing that you want to improve, be it articulation, intonation, emotion, comfort, whatever it is you want to improve, and brainstorm or choose one of the pre-suggested strategies for that area of improvement, and then test it out. Record yourself trying that strategy, listen back, and press yes, it worked, or no, it didn't work to create that improvement.
It's such a clean way of tracking your progress. I do it every day, and it has done wonders for my bass playing and just my overall enthusiasm for music. You got to check it out. Modacity.co is the site, and if you go to our site, you can click through it and get a special offer for lifetime access for this app. Thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast, Modacity.
Yeah, well, I remember talking with Nina DeCesar, who plays bass in the Oregon Symphony. I'm probably not exactly quoting her right, but she's just like, you play Lloyd's pieces and you just feel like a total virtuoso, like just awesome, like you can do anything. And I feel that too. They are so fun to play. And I remember I played Let It Be. I played a couple of them in Tijuana for Andres Martin's Baja California Festival, and as soon as I got done with it, I heard Barry Green let out this big whoop. He was like, "Woo!" So so I love it, and we definitely need volume 2 of these pieces. So I know you're a busy guy, but they're so great, and I'm going to run out of pieces pretty soon because I'm learning every few months. I'm learning a new one. I want to switch gears for a second and talk about something that I know you're also very passionate about. You got, and we haven't talked about this all on the podcast because it's all relatively recent. You got yourself a beautiful new bass.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so. And I know tell us about that journey and about your new instrument and what it's doing for your playing.
First of all, thank you for actually asking me about that because I feel like I've neglected to lately to thank the maker in some ways that I really have wanted to, and just to let people know about him. When I was in Prague, at the Bass Europe convention, I saw this bass. It looked beautiful. The workmanship looked just so refined and impeccable, and I just was drawn to want to play that. And it happened to be an E-flat neck, so it was a little hard for me to. But I played it through a few of my pieces, and there was some nice applause from the vendors that were standing around. It was early in the conference, and Luca Pardini, the maker of the bass, seemed really proud, that someone was playing his bass, and I asked him to tell me about it. He is a very traditional maker. He's very proud of that. He doesn't cut any corners, that he won't, for instance, antique his instruments. He says there's no old bass that was antiqued. He says wait 100 years for it to look like that. He's not interested in it. He's very pure, how do you say, what would be the traditional,
traditional,
his ideals of making. He told me that the wood in the bass he got from the same forest that Stradivari would have gotten his wood. How is that possible? I don't know, but he believes that. So he chose the best possible wood. There's these beautiful figuration in the spruce that supposedly adds density to the top, and his philosophy of making is to make the instrument as light and as responsive as possible, unlike a different. And when I first lifted it up it's a removable neck instrument. When I first lifted it, the body of the bass up without the neck, I was completely astonished. It's very light. But anyway, it's been a journey with the instrument. Mario Lamar did the neck, turned it into a removable neck bass, which I'm very grateful to him. And as with any new instrument, it's taken me about a year to really begin to understand the instrument and for us to understand each other and for it to. But this convention, this was the moment when I feel like, okay, we're doing it. We're joined now, me and this instrument, and it is doing what the maker, I think, wanted. It's very responsive, very resonant, and rings well, and clear. And I think over the next 5-10 years, I think we're going to have a great relationship.
And I love that. So you got this bass because your bass that you have in Tampa is older and not a bass you want to be traveling with, and it's so nice to be able to bring your own instrument, an instrument you know, an instrument you love, and in all of us, but for what you do, it's just really important. So now you've got this bass, and now it's even easier for you to travel and go to events and go to present at schools and at different institutions, and I know that you're starting to do more and more of that, which I am so glad, because I just want to spread the word about what you do. And again, I said it earlier, but go to LloydGoldstein.com and just meet Lloyd, this video, and just learn about what he's up to. And I've seen him present several times, and it's the sort of thing that would be great, certainly for bass players, certainly for musicians, but anybody. It'd be great for people in healthcare. It'd be great for people in all sorts of different careers and paths. So I hope, and if anyone's listening and wants to bring Lloyd in, I know he's in demand, but you can go to his website, you can get in touch with him, and it would be wonderful to get you into.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, these places.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I having an instrument, to be able to travel with your own instrument and to feel that connection that you have with it, I can't imagine it would be very difficult to do the same thing with. So I'm super grateful to have that. As far as the presentations go, it's really interesting. I want to thank you for the few years ago for encouraging me to, and it stayed in the back of my mind, this idea of sharing, talking about arts and medicine, talking about some of the things we mentioned earlier about different career paths, about just the meaning, the power of music itself, and being able to play some of the music that I play for people. It's a little scary. I've been invited to go to the Cleveland Institute in the fall to some other and I don't truly have this kind. It's just not something I would have expected. So I'm really tickled about it, and can't wait to get my feet wet, visiting these places and meeting these people.
Yeah, well, and the work you do is so beautiful. So all you need to do is just go tell your story about what you do. And one of the things is entrainment, the term where it's sort of taking people into a different sort of energy. That might not be the right way to describe it, but I remember you several years ago, and we've talked about it since. Someone's in a certain emotional state or mental, and I just think it's really interesting how you use your selection of tunes to sort of take people, help guide them into a different emotional state. Am I getting that right? Kind of, sort of?
Partially. The word entrainment in the training that I took as a music practitioner, the main use of it is that we get a sense of where when I walk into a hospital room or up to a person in the hospital and I offer to play for them, I'm trying to get a sense of their energy level, maybe their pain level, maybe their mood, just the feeling in the room. And that first notes that I play, the first piece that I play, should validate where they are, should serve as best as I can discern their needs in the moment. And that, if I do that well, we become connected across this musical bridge. And then it's open. We can go in whatever direction seems appropriate. So it's that moment of validation and the music. At that point, the music is what does the work. This is what's different between music, expressive arts, and say therapy, art therapy or music therapy. Rather than there being an intentional clinical outcome or a diagnosis or whatever, an assessment, it's simply making that first connection and then allowing the art form to do what it naturally does. And I think sometimes we forget why we even chose music in the first place. It's because it touches us or moves us. So when that happens, when that movement starts to happen.
This episode is brought to you by the Upton Bass String Instrument Company, a company that I have been such a fan of over the years. Gary and Eric and all the good folks at Upton, they do extraordinary work. They've been at it for a long time, and it has been so much fun to watch them evolve over the years. And a question they get asked a lot is, what's the difference between their Bohemian model bass and their standard model basses? And basically what it boils down to is they come from the same basic outline, but there's much more customization available in a Bohemian bass. So Upton standard basses basically look like each other. They're either laminate, hybrid, or carved, but they're similar in their form, while you can get your Bohemian bass customized if you want hat peg tuners, if you want all sorts of other details. That's the bass you can customize. And if you haven't been to the Upton website recently, they're constantly adding new videos, new photos, new descriptions, and every bass has a story. And I love following along with these stories. Visit them at uptonbass.com, and thanks for sponsoring the podcast. Buying an instrument or bow is a major decision, especially the first time a student's looking for an instrument. Here's A440 Violin Shop's Michael Spadero on what he advises.
We usually start with an approximate price range, and we'll show them anything within that price range, and then to give them a little bit of context, I'll often show them instruments that are more or less expensive than that. But I say to play as many instruments or bows as possible before you buy.
Whether you're looking for a new instrument or a new bow or that next step in your journey, A440 Violin Shop has got you covered. Look for them online at a440violinshop.com, and thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast. This episode is brought to you by Steve Swan String Bass, and I've always been impressed by how Steve manages to get basses sounding so vibrant, whether it's a student-level bass or a top-of-the-line professional bass. Here's Steve on some of what he has learned in terms of setup.
When steel strings came into general use around 1959, the German bass makers flipped out, and they really got scared that they're going to get big shiploads of basses back that got wrecked by these high-tension steel strings. And so they did three things that really changed the function of the instrument. They shortened the string length, and they lowered the neck angle so the bridges weren't that tall anymore. And then they made the tops a lot thicker. They really wanted to ensure that these basses were not going to come back across the ocean for work anymore. And so the basses tend to sound kind of nasal, and they didn't have any depth. They didn't have a chest voice at all. You know, and so what we do with increasing the neck angle, and we can also increase the overstands for modern playing, can get up in a thumb position a lot easier. So a neck reset can accomplish that. Sometimes we'll transplant a neck or make a new neck for these basses that might have a string length that are not friendly to modern playing.
Learn more about what Steve can do to get your bass playing better, and check out his great selection of basses at steveswanstringbass.com. And thanks for sponsoring the podcast, Steve.
I love this address by this guy, and we talked about this in the I think the last time we talked, this address by the dean of the Ithaca School of Music. He talks about that the Greeks described our interior as almost like a solar system, like these. and that when we hear music that touches us, that moves us, it realigns the celestial bodies inside us. It realigns us inside. And I see this, I can see those changes happening in patients. So most exciting thing in the world. And I think that's why I can't possibly ever get tired of doing this.
Yeah, it must be because everybody's unique. Everybody's in a different state. They're struggling with a different outcome or diagnosis. I remember you also talking about how you'll play a piece differently depending on the energy.
Yes.
I think you were talking about Francois Rabat's piece of Repa, right? I might not be pronouncing that right, but you played it in a very different style, like very soft, I think, for somebody, just because that was just how you were reading the energy.
Yeah, it was. Do you want me to describe that?
Please.
Yeah. This man was in a isolation unit, a bone marrow unit, so a large private room where he's not allowed to leave that area because of a compromised immune system. He can't leave that area for at least a month. They're kind of destroying his immune system, and then they're reintroducing stem cells to try to heal that system of healthy red blood cell production. And there are a lot of potential side effects from this. And when I walked in, and I knocked on the door and walked in, the room was dark, dim. He was laying flat on his back on the bed, and I gave my normal introduction quietly. Hi, I'm Lloyd, and so on, offering to play music for him. And he said he said, I'm having some pain, so I just really can't move much, but just do your thing, And I stood there in the dark, wondering what I would do, kind of listening inside myself. And I had this idea to play Francois' piece, Reitba, which actually Francois says is describing a trip that he took into the desert with people, and he was wondering, why am I here? I'm in the middle of the desert. And he said he saw this rose-colored lake in the middle of nothing. And around the edge of the lake was white foam that looked like snow, and it was moving with the movement of the water. And so the piece centers around this water-like movement that comes and goes throughout the piece. But it covers the whole range of the bass, from the lowest note to one of the highest notes on the instrument. And it's quite a dynamic piece. And why I thought to play that, or how I thought to play that all at a whisper, I don't know, but that's what came to my mind. And I was playing so soft sometimes that the fundamental wasn't even really speaking always. And did this, and at the end there was silence, and I'm wondering what's happening. And after a few moments, the man said, that you can't imagine where that piece took me, the journey I just went on. And he didn't know that the piece was about a journey. And he started describing all these landscapes, not the desert in particular, but these beautiful landscapes in detail of what he was seeing through and I was so moved and so excited that I left the room. I played we had some more music, some more interaction. I left the room very emotional, feeling very emotional, and thinking about Maestro Rabat, and I went and called him, and I don't do that. Maybe once a year I might talk to him. It's not like we're, it's not like me and you. Like I don't call him from the airport.
Sure.
And he said, "Oh, I'm really, really so happy and proud of the work that you're doing. And by the way, have I given you your diploma yet?" So that it's just another example of the crazy synchronicity of I never would have. I'm not one of Maestro Rabat's what I call bass wizards. I can't just. I'm not Volkan Orhon. I can't read anything and play beautifully on this. I do what I do, but I never expected to get a diploma from l'Institut Francois Rabat. But that gentleman in that dark room, he gave me my diploma, in a sense.
It's beautiful.
And I was in tears when Maestro Rabat said that. So then I had the difficult task of going to Paris with my wife, and I'm joking, not difficult.
Not so difficult.
Not so difficult.
Oh man, it's if you haven't been to Lloyd's website, go because you'll learn about his journey and his experiences, and it's just so well representative of you and what you're doing. And so this is only the second time we've ever chatted for the podcast, so we got to do a round 3 and a round 4. And I really appreciate what you do, and it's good that I'm so glad we got a little bit of time to connect.
I want to thank you, and I consider you a prime example of the principles the principles of synchronicity that I believe. When I talk to students, and maybe your ears should be burning because I'm almost always telling your story and what you do out of your sincere interest and passion for people and for the bass world and your adventurous spirit, your rebel spirit. You've made this just an enormous. I'm not just saying this because I'm truly, honestly grateful for everything that you bring to the world. So, and I'm honored to be your friend.
Right back at you, Lloyd. Me too. Man.
Thank you, Lloyd. LloydGoldstein.com. You got to watch that video that I referenced and just dig through it. And I'm loving his pieces. I'm working on them for some events coming up this summer, and just can't say enough good things about Lloyd and his mission and his music and his performing and you name it, all the good things. That's Lloyd. If you enjoyed this and you want to share this with somebody, forward the email. And if you aren't on our email list, by the way, you can get on it. Just go to contrabassconversations.com and you can stay in touch with the weekly news in the double bass world. And there's always a lot of it. So I'd love to connect with you there or social media or wherever you hang out. That would be great. Contrabass Conversations is produced by Michael Cooper, Steve Hinchy, Trevor Jones, and award-winning bass maker Mitch Mooring. You can learn more about what he's up to, and he's a rising star of the bass world for sure, at his website, mitchmooring.com. And thank you to Krista Copper of the Backstage Creative Podcast for cataloging and archiving everything we do here on the podcast. I'm your host, Jason Heath, and we will see you again soon for more life on the low end of the spectrum.